Well, Noy, thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Let everybody know who you are.
Noy Leyb, 33 years old, IDF reservist, now living in Tel Aviv.
All right. It's your first time having Air One. What do you think?
Man, I've been following your walk with me and
L'chaim.
I'm got the Hailey Bieber strawberry delight.
Hailey Bieber strawberry glazed skim smoothie.
Man, it tastes like an actual strawberry.
Oh, yes. You know they have a $20 strawberry over there. It's like this giant Japanese strawberry.
Like a box of strawberries.
No, it's just like one singular strawberry. Just like one big strawberry.
And do people buy it or is it like on display?
People buy it. It's usually sold out.
Get out of here.
See, people here just like to waste money.
Yeah, I can see that. Like this smoothie was the price of probably 3 smoothies in Tel Aviv.
You know what? Worth it though, right?
Listen.
And it's going to clear your skin. You're going to be literally glowing by the time you get back to Tel Aviv.
I used to sell Dead Sea skincare. I know what skincare is.
Did you really?
I was the guy at the mall saying, "Excuse me, can I ask you a question?"
Wow. So what were you doing before you went back to the IDF?
In 2020, I moved to Michigan, did my MBA at the University of Michigan, graduated 2022, and I launched a startup in New York. It was in the bachelorette party industry.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm really good at planning parties. And I was like, okay, let's plan weekends. And what's like the hardest party to plan? Definitely a bachelorette party, because women are like choosing what they're wearing 8 months in advance, what the themes are. And yeah, I raised money, had a couple people working for us. And then October 7th happened.
Wow. Well, you're truly doing Hashem's work.
There you go.
But when you do get back to partying, I expect an invite.
Oh, yeah.
I expect to be
Don't
VIP.
worry, you'll be the first one.
Thank you.
There you go.
So did you serve in the IDF prior, like when you were 18, 19, or is this was 2023 your first time serving with the IDF?
Yeah, so I was born in Canada. I moved to Israel when I was 18, specifically to join the army. I made Aliyah, as we call it in Hebrew, and I moved by myself. I served in the paratroopers for 3 years. I was a staff sergeant, and once you're discharged from the army, if you're a combat soldier or in a few other units, you do reserve duty. Mm-hmm. So every year since 2012, I would go back for about 1.5 months per year and train for the war that's happening right now.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what has motivated you to go back to the IDF? And I know that right now, like you're, for lack of a better term, you're taking a break and then you're going back in September.
Right.
Correct?
Yeah. What's motivated me?
Yeah.
I mean, you look at the world right now. Like on October 7th, I learned that Jews, while we have few supporters here and there, we are fighting for ourselves. If we aren't going to fight, no one's going to fight for us. And even before, I grew up in a very Zionist home. I knew that Israel was the only home for the Jewish people. Mm-hmm. If things go the wrong way in the world for some reason, the Jews will only be able to go to Israel. So what's better than to give a couple years of your life to go and protect that place? And that was kind of my thing.
Are you religious?
I don't know. Like I will wrap tefillin every day, so I'll pray in the morning for about 15 minutes. It started out as a religious thing. Now it's more spiritual. I'll keep kosher meat. I don't keep Shabbat. I don't keep all the laws, but I do what's good for me. Mm-hmm. Yeah. My mom comes from a very religious family, 9 siblings. They're all super religious. My dad, a bit less, so I'm kind of in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I just on your part African.
Yes, I'm actually half African, as you can clearly see.
My mom was,
yeah, give me some. I was from Tunisia, but I got the Romanian genes, very white.
Well, very nice, very nice. Well, I wanted to talk to you, this segment that I do here is called Allegations Against. And, right now with the war and the conflict that's going on, everybody has these different perspectives. People ask a lot of questions, and you're actually one of the sources that I often send people to when they ask me questions about the IDF, because you're someone who's literally there. And I've always liked the transparency in your content, because you go very in depth about things that are kind of difficult to find, whether it's on the internet or some people just kind of shy away from talking about, but you address things really head on. So I really appreciate you being here today.
Thank you. I feel like people have become Middle East experts overnight. And yeah, I mean, I was never on social media. On October 7th, I was living in New York, decided to just post a video. And then what I realized is I was basically taking people through my journey to war and in war, being able to take a digital camera and eventually a GoPro into Gaza to show the truth, not trying to hide anything, was my way of, showing the world what's going on. And I sometimes criticize the IDF in Israel, but my whole thing was like just to show the truth.
Which I've seen, which is something I really respect. You know, being someone that's done political commentary for 4 years now, one of the things people are like, well, are you going to criticize this person or this group or this country? And I'm like, I do.
Yeah.
I'm like, you
do.
just don't tune into that. And I like that you really do give as objective of criticism and of perspective as possible. So, you know, I have a list of questions here for you. I'm, again, just really grateful and honored that you're here to talk about this today.
You.
So the first question I have for you is, can you describe a moment during your service that fundamentally changed your perspective of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict?
I think that if you would ask me this before October 7th, I would have a different answer. But I feel like on October 7th, when I see what these animals did, how the people who crossed over from Gaza into Israel weren't just Hamas terrorists, but they were also Palestinian civilians. What they did, their hunger to just really destroy the Jewish people, that changed my outlook on what's going on in Gaza. Like I'm a peaceful person, you know, I'm half Canadian. I always look for like the good, and I always look for the peaceful side. But I understood on October 7th that these people, they don't want peace with us. The Palestinians want to get rid of the Jewish people. You want a two-state solution, you need two partners for that. But these people don't want the Jews around. They don't want Israel around. They want to take us over. So that kind of reshaped how I thought about the entire conflict.
You know, I was on an IDF base just a few weeks ago, and a soldier said this to me and it really stuck in my head. He said, Hamas is fighting because they hate everyone in front of them. The IDF is fighting because they love everyone behind them.
Yeah.
And that really just had this click moment for me of just like the difference in motive that's coming from both sides of this conflict.
Yeah, definitely. Hamas and the Palestinians, you know, a lot of their agendas that they glorify death. Death is a good thing. You know, when you are a martyr, when you blow up, when you kill Israelis, your parents, your mom is crying tears of joy. In the meantime, when the Israeli parents, when their children are dying, they are crying. Like they're like, we don't celebrate death, we celebrate life. This is the opposite between us and the Palestinians.
You know, I watched a 47-minute film, which for those who don't know, it's a 47-minute compilation of footage from October 7th. It's clips taken by Hamas from their head cams. They sometimes take victims or hostages' phones, record it, send themselves murdering them or being them or doing these different terrible things. And so much was caught on camera. And watching them celebrate as they were leading terror, doing the most unspeakably horrible things to these innocent people, I was baffled to hear the parents of these people praising them, saying that they did it for Allah, saying that everything that they did was making their family proud. And I just don't understand how people can hear that and see that and not understand how evil Hamas is. And then you have the factor of that, or then, then you also have the fact that a lot of these people that are praising, you know, the other side of this and against Israel, they don't even know that October 7th happened. And I didn't realize that until I went to the UCLA encampment and I was overhearing, you know, I snuck in, went in disguise, and a lot of the people inside of this encampment didn't even know what October 7th was. Yeah. Like, what do you think of that?
It's ignorance. Like, look, I fought in Gaza, I fought in Lebanon, I fought Hamas and Hezbollah, and that's hard. But when I came back to America, what I faced was much harder than the ignorance, and it's not just be ignorant. It's rewriting history. You know, there's a woman who told me that when she was on one of those double-decker tour buses in London a few months ago, they passed by this Palestinian protest, and then everyone on the bus like, what's going on? And the tour guide was saying the Palestinians are protesting against the attack that Israel launched on Hamas on October 7th. And it's like, are you kidding me?
Wow.
There was the famous phone call, which you definitely heard, where the Hamas terrorist called his parents saying, Mom, I killed 10 Zionists. I killed 10. And his parents are proud of him. And it's like, in what environment do you grow up for that to be your end goal? When you Facebook Live the murdering of an Israeli, it's like, how low have they gotten? And that those films, they destroyed me.
What would you say was the most challenging moment for you in Gaza?
When we crossed into Gaza, my brain totally like shut down and only thought about two things. Number one was to bring back the hostages, and number two was to eliminate Hamas. I stopped thinking about everything, my family, my friends, and it was like this happened automatically. And as we moved forward, my unit was the first reserve duty unit to enter from the north of Gaza. We would take over houses, fight terrorism, and do what you see in movies and in video games, and it really was like that. And when you clear a house, you're supposed to, number one, get rid of the terrorists, and number two, look for weapons and intelligence. Sometimes we would find maps that showed us, different tunnels and stuff like that. But when you start clearing the room of a little girl, and you can clearly see that it belongs to a little girl because it's pink walls and there's a butterfly and you see a little backpack with little books, as a human being, you feel a bit uncomfortable. And while, we're used to finding weapons and maps and things like these Hamas headbands, which clearly show that the house that we were at belonged to a Hamas terrorist, when you enter the room of a little girl, it's kind of weird. And I start opening the drawers. Again, I see clothing of a little girl and I'm getting super uncomfortable. And I'm like questioning myself, like, what am I doing here? Is this what I stand for? And I keep on looking and I move the drawer. Sorry, I keep on moving. I move the dresser. And behind the dresser, I see pictures of Hamas terrorists with hearts on them. Like, I don't know about you, but when I was a kid, I had posters of like celebrities, musicians, and all of a sudden this 7-8-year-old girl is looking up to terrorists. And I was like, how deeply rooted is the hatred towards the Jewish people? And these terrorists, they're famous. They're sitting in Israeli prison for conducting terror attacks and murdering Jews. And it's like this 7-year-old has no chance of becoming a peaceful person. And that's the moment when I was like, okay, no one here in Gaza wants peace.
Wow.
The children, the people, the only humanity that I saw in Gaza was from the animals. The cats, the dogs, the donkeys, the birds who would come up to us, which we would feed, and like they were the only peaceful people there. And that changed my entire perspective.
Wow. I say often how part of the problem in the root of the problem of Palestinian education system is how they romanticize terrorism and anti-Semitism. But that takes it to a very literal context. To see a poster where you're glorifying Hamas in that kind of way,
with hearts on them, like a little. If you're, 18, if you're 30, fine, do it. You're a little girl. They should be learning about, like, I don't know, it's science and math. They should be looking up to these celebrities, musicians, whatever you want. Why are you glorifying terrorism at such a young age?
Like a little Jewish girl might be looking up to Justin Bieber, and a little Palestinian girl is being taught to look up to a literal terrorist.
Yeah. And the boys, they're looking up to that person and wanting to become that person.
Right. And
like, what?
The unfortunate reality is so many of them do.
Yeah.
Because that's one of the things that shocked me too, seeing the 47-minute film, was how many of the Hamas members were young. They were younger than me. They were like 19, 20, 21 years old. And in my mind, when I envision a terrorist, I think of Osama bin Laden. I think of someone that's older, long, bushy beard, all of that. To see that these were young frat boys, essentially, is what they looked like. And they were conducting the most foul hatred crimes I have ever seen in my life.
And they start younger. When I was in active duty, when I was 18, I was on the Gaza border. We would catch 13, 14-year-old boys who would run from Gaza into Israel, and we would catch them with knives in their pockets, and they would literally be shaking. They would be peeing their pants. We'd question them and end up sending them back because they weren't a real threat for us. But Hamas was sending them to test us. Look at our reaction time. Look at what we're doing to them. Look at how we treat them. And they start early, and it's like, let's become a martyr. Let's kill Jews. You have videos of younger kids, 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, saying, our goal is to kill the Zionists. How are you supposed to have peace with those people?
So you shared a video where you said in the IDF you were supposed to tell your commander no if you feel like something is unethical. What is the consequence of that?
you're not just supposed to tell him no. You're expected to tell him no. If there's something that you see is unjust or wrong or immoral, you have the full right, and you'll be backed by the IDF to say no. The IDF isn't perfect. It's not pink. Every army and every country has their problems. But if you as an IDF soldier see something wrong, it's your responsibility to say, no, I'm not doing this. And you'll be 100% fine.
If I can ask you, is that a situation you've been in?
No, all of my commanders, thankfully, have been, go by the books and follow. We've been in a lot of ethical dilemmas, but nothing that I've been in made me question my commander's decision.
One of the most common questions that I get is, why does the IDF bomb civilian areas? What do you say about that?
Yeah, it's very easy to just see that and say the IDF is horrible. Before, we have something called the IDF Code of Ethics. I actually brought it with me here today. This is something that you're given as soon as you enlist, okay? Every soldier has this, and it has all the ethics and the morals that we have. And one of them, before we even start talking about the things you have to follow, one of them is, human dignity, meaning that every life, Israeli or Palestinian or whatever, is valued. So, what's the question again? Bombing civilians.
Why does the IDF bomb civilian areas?
Yeah. So, put yourself in this situation, okay? There is a Hamas operative, Hamas terrorist, firing out of a civilian building, out of a hospital, out of a school, out of a playground. And this isn't a theory. I'm telling you, this is what I saw with my own eyes when I was in Gaza. And he's putting Israeli civilians in danger. So normally, most armies would just fire back. But the IDF knows that in this civilian building, you have Hamas terrorists, and you also have civilians. So because the IDF, one of the most important things in the IDF is human dignity, civilian life, the IDF will do a couple things before it bombs these buildings. Number one, it will text everyone in the area in Arabic saying, hey, you are in a dangerous area. You need to move because this area will be bombed. Number one. Number two is they'll also call them in Arabic saying you have to move. The third thing is that it'll drop leaflets in Arabic saying, in this area, you need to move because you'll be bombed. And the fourth thing they do is the roof knocking. They'll drop a bomb on the building, but it's a dud bomb. It's not a real bomb. It just makes noise to try and get people to wake up in case for some reason they didn't see the leaflets, the text message, or the phone call. Only then does the IDF bomb it. Sometimes they give them 2 hours to leave, sometimes 12 hours, sometimes 24 hours. Now, if you look at it from like a military perspective, the IDF is literally telling Hamas, hey, we're going to bomb this area. You should leave. That gives Hamas the chance to leave. And we know that. But we also care about civilian life, which is why we do this before we bomb these buildings. But eventually it comes to a point where you need to protect yourself. Israel can't let Hamas or whoever in Gaza continue to shoot rockets at us and not do anything about it. We have to protect ourselves, and that's what we do.
Considering that so many of the Gazan civilians were the ones doing the kidnappings on October 7th, and how many of these Palestinian civilians who claim that they're not a part of Hamas are leading some of the terrorist attacks that happen in Israel, how do you even distinguish who is a soldier from that area versus who is just a civilian?
That's the hard part, man. It's like these Hamas terrorists, they don't wear a uniform that says, look at me. They don't have a name tag that says, my name is Muhammad and I'm a Hamas terrorist. We realize that the way that we can identify them is when they are about to shoot at us. Okay, so we can't pull the trigger until we are in danger. And in the ceasefire in the beginning of the war, I think it was in December 2023, my unit was responsible for all the units in Gaza left, and one unit stayed to ensure that, nothing is, the terrorists don't move around. And we saw the terrorists mixing with the civilians. And there's nothing you can do about it because they're mixing in. You identify them when they have a gun and they're about to shoot at you.
From your perspective as an IDF soldier, what are the Palestinians even so angry about?
How far do you want to go back? Like we can, we got to be here all day, but
I would say in the more recent context, pre-October 7th, but let's say in the last couple decades.
Yeah.
If you had to summarize their perspective, where do you think their anger is stemming from?
So let's talk about when Israel was established. Okay. So in The Palestinians call it the Nakba. We call it, Independence Day, 1948, May 14th. The Arabs were offered about 50% of the land. The way they wanted to split the land was not by, let's choose what goes to Israel and what goes to the Gazans. It was split on where the Israelis lived, the Jews lived, and where the Arabs lived. The Arabs didn't agree to that. So the British were like, screw it, I'm out, let's go. Now, the Palestinians, the Arabs, because there was no Palestine back then, they left Israel for a few reasons. Number one, they chose to leave. There was a war and it was dangerous. Number two, their Arab leaders said, guys, take your keys, which is why many of them wear keys, leave into other countries and come back when it'll be safe for you to come back. And also some of them were pushed out because it was a war. Many Arabs see this as Israel taking over their land. So since then, and through all the wars that's been happening since then, 63, 67, 73, and Lebanon, like all of this, all these wars between the Arabs and the Palestinians, all these wars between the Arabs and the Israelis, it's like they claim it as their land. I'm not going to lie to you. There were Arabs living in the land of Israel before, but they have shown time and time again that they don't want peace. They don't want a two-state solution. They want the entire land for themselves. How many peace processes have we gone through? How many times have we been so close to giving the Arabs so much land? They just don't want to live with us. They want all or nothing. Mm-hmm. And that means that if they get all, we're gone. So,
from the river to the sea, as they say.
Yes, Palestine will be free. They're genius, by the way. The chants they have, they're so good. They have a great marketing team.
Great marketing team. It's great. That's how Rudy Rockman describes it. They have the wrong message, but a great messenger.
For sure. For sure.
So I want to know, why are there so many checkpoints in the West Bank?
So the checkpoints started right around the Second Intifada. The Intifadas were, a series of violent attacks against the Jews. The second one around the year 2000 was much more violent than the first one, and it included the regular terror attacks where a Palestinian would try and go and kill an Israeli, but it also included bus bombings, it included cafe bombings. So Israel decided to put checkpoints in areas that were problematic. Why? Not to, make a difference between Israelis and Palestinians, but because Israelis were being put in danger. Palestinians were coming from the West Bank, Judea and Samaria, whatever you want to call it, and they were blowing up buses. They were killing Israelis. So checkpoints were set up to ensure that soldiers would check these Palestinians, and a lot of weapons were found. A lot of terror attacks were stopped. And I mean, like, people talk about the checkpoints like you're disturbing the lives of the Palestinians. What happens when you fly to another country? When you go to, like, I came to this building, I was checked by security.
You sure were.
Okay.
Don't try it. Don't try it. Okay.
I don't understand what the difference is. Like, if there is a threat and you put up checkpoints, just like you do at the airport or wherever, to minimize terror, and those checkpoints work because those terrorists get caught, I don't know what the issue is. You want to take down the checkpoints? Stop conducting terror attacks. You want to move freely like you did pre-Second Intifada? Stop killing Israelis. Not so hard.
I really do think that the more I learn about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, it really is the definition of cause and effect. I feel like there's so many lessons that break down to just a simple cause and effect.
100%.
Another question that I get a lot is, why does the IDF restrict aid going into Gaza? Or is that even true?
Great question. So for the first 3 weeks of the war, the IDF didn't go into Gaza from October 7th until a couple weeks after. The day that the day that the IDF went into Gaza, Israel was allowing aid to go into Gaza. Israel, the only responsibility it has is to facilitate aid going into Gaza. Israel opened the doors and allowed aid to go in. Since that day, the third week after October 7th, 70 trucks worth of aid have gone into Gaza every single day. Okay, about 2 million tons of aid have gone into Gaza since the beginning of the war.
And who's funding most of that?
You have people from all over the world. You have, like, when I was in Gaza, I saw aid coming in from Turkey, from UNRWA. You have all these different organizations pushing aid. So it's not that the aid doesn't get into Gaza. Aid gets into Gaza, It's being filmed, but the question is, where does it go? And the aid is unfortunately doesn't always reach the civilians. Hamas, we've seen this time and time again. Hamas will hijack the aid and take it to themselves, or put it on the market and sell it for 10 times the price. When we would go into terrorist houses and we would do what we have to do, we would find storages of aid. You know, I've photos of wheat flour sacks that says for the Palestinian refugees, not for resale. And it was all being taken by Hamas terrorists. You have aid groups who are trying to do the right thing. And you know what? Fine. I think that the aid should go to them. But it's being taken by Hamas. And as of now, because Hamas, the numbers have gone down a bit, Hamas is bribing the Palestinians to join them with aid. We'll give you and your family all the aid that you need if you come and join Hamas.
They're always exploiting their own people. You know, I was baffled when I learned, it wasn't until my third trip to Israel that I learned that so many of the kidnappings that happened on and after October 7th actually came from civilians. And then I learned that there was a financial incentive for them to go and do that. Do you know much about that? Like, what was the value there?
I know that the Palestinians crossed over into Israel for a couple of reasons. On October 7th, about 6,000 crossed into Israel, 6,000 Palestinians, 3,000 were terrorists, 3,000 were civilians. They were going in to do a couple of things. Number one was to kidnap Israelis. I don't know what the financial incentive was, but for you to kidnap an Israeli as a Palestinian, you'll get the most pride in the world. Other people were going to kill Israelis, and other people were going into houses and stealing things. Like, they were stealing the stupidest things, like toaster ovens, chairs. You see Palestinians walking back from Israel to Gaza with like the smallest things from houses. So they just wanted to destroy, whether it was a house or an Israeli, or bring back something that wasn't theirs.
Then they never bring back deodorant or body wash.
They did not. We should donate it to them, though.
Musty terrorists. You know, on a heavier note, there are a lot of conspiracies and narratives that I hear brewing about October 7th. And one of the allegations is that Bibi knew about October 7th in advance, but did not take it seriously. What do you think of that? And is that even a popular narrative in Israel?
To answer the question simply, I think it's wrong. Okay, I know that especially Israelis, many of them hate Bibi, many of them love Bibi. I don't think that any Israeli, any Jew has the heart to let something like this happen so they can stay in power. I do have to say that we failed big time. The IDF, one of the best armies in the world, failed. There were signs that October 7th was happening. You had Hamas terrorists preparing. You had a bunch of SIM cards being turned on October 7th in the morning, randomly in Gaza. You had there was an older man sitting on the border of Gaza, and like this pre-October 7th, he was sitting on the border, and he was so good at like deciphering, what was being said on their radios, that the IDF actually gave him equipment to start listening to what was going on in Gaza. And on October 7th and a bit before, he was saying, guys, there's going to be this huge attack into Israel. The IDF was like, old man, you're crazy. They took away his equipment and told him to go home. You had this officer who sent an email saying something's going to happen. You had different girls who were, watching from close and saying something's going to happen. Like, there were signs that October 7th was going to happen, but I don't think that Bibi or anyone truly knew that it was going to be this bad. I also have to say that the IDF thwarts attacks from Gaza and from the West Bank and from other areas every single day. Like, I don't want to say we're bound to miss one, but it's life. Was it a huge attack? Yes, but we failed. That's all I have to say.
That's very aligned with my perspective of it. I've been to Israel now 4 times, and every time that I'm there, I have the app that gives you alerts of when attacks are happening, when people are attempting to attack. Luckily, of the 4 times I've been there, I always leave right before the rockets start. Like, literally, I'm at the airport and I hear that there's rockets going on, at least in the area that I was in, but it's always going on in the north. So what I try to explain the best that I can to people, because I tell people, I love Israel, but I am not an Israel expert. I'm not an IDF soldier. It's like, this is why I'm so happy to have you here. I tell people there are so many attacks that happen all the time. Yes, there are some that are going to slip through the cracks. And I'm sure there were signs that something was afoot, because there's always signs that something is afoot in Israel. It's literally an existential fight that is 24/7 out there. And I think it's very harsh and ridiculous to think that anybody in Israel had knowledge of the horror that was going to happen on October 7th. So hearing you say that does give even me some clarity and some context as well, that I just think that's a bizarre narrative.
Definitely. It's anything to make Israel look bad.
Literally. They even tried to say it was racist. I always say it's 50 Shades of Brown over there.
Man, speaking of racist, one thing, the most ridiculous claim I heard, people were claiming that the IDF is Palestinian women, and the IDF proved that it doesn't Palestinian women or men. And then people were saying, that the reason that the IDF doesn't Palestinian women is because they're racist. And it's like, what? Are you serious? That's when I knew that the other side is just their lost cause.
It's not funny, but that is just so unserious.
Yeah.
That is wild.
Yeah.
So I have so much I want to say, but I can't get demonetized on YouTube, not this early. Last couple questions for you. When it comes to getting the hostages home, because that is the number one priority of the IDF at this point, do you think that the UN knows where the hostages are?
I think that the UN has a lot more information than we think they do. Maybe not every single person, but it's been shown time and time again that there was, UNRWA buildings that Hamas operatives were working out of. Hamas terrorists. You had under UN buildings, you had tunnels. Okay, when you dig a tunnel under a building, any idiot knows that something is going on there. Mm-hmm. Whether you choose to ignore, even if you choose to ignore, why is someone building a tunnel under your building? So I don't know if they know where the hostages are, because the hostages right now aren't being held just by Hamas. Some of them, as we've seen, are in civilian homes. I'm sure if the UN...
Still.
I'm sure. I mean, we don't know. They moved all the time. But I'm sure if the UN wanted to, they could find out somehow where some of the hostages are.
Yeah. It's really baffling to me that the UN doesn't step in to do more. And people are always talking about, well, this is a war crime and that is a war crime. It's like, I've never once heard anyone that isn't already a Zionist talk about the amount of war crimes that Hamas is actively doing, and just how much of a humanitarian crisis all of this is.
If you are a Palestinian and you speak out against Hamas, we've seen this happen lately, you will be killed.
Yeah.
There's nothing. Okay, you will follow what they say, and there's no reason for the UN to go and try and figure this out, because it doesn't fit their narrative.
Yeah. Is there anything else you wish people understood about the IDF?
Well, the IDF, like I said earlier, the IDF isn't perfect, but we strive to be. Once we enlist, doesn't matter if you're a combat soldier or if you're an assistant pouring coffee for a certain general, you all have the same morals and ethics, and we really value human life. When a terrorist conducts an attack in Israel, we treat them in hospitals if they're still alive. In Gaza, it was very hard for the medics on my team to treat the Palestinians, whether they were Hamas or not, giving them first aid. Mm-hmm. It's like you are being shot at by Hamas. You catch a terrorist, and then you have to treat him with first aid. Mm-hmm. But that's what separates us from the rest. It's what separates us from Hamas, that we are, in the end of the day, we're human beings. Whether I agree with it or not is irrelevant, because those are the rules that we follow in the IDF. Once you put that uniform on, you are following the rules and acting as a human being with a lot of dignity.
Well, I'll say y'all are better than me, because I know when I went there in January, I went there 90 days after October 7th, and I actually did visit, I think 2 hospitals I visited, and there were Palestinians that tried to go. There were Palestinian civilians there. I believe that there were some Hamas members there too, at least prior to me being there. But there were Palestinian civilians there who had tried to conduct terrorism and ended up getting hurt while in Israel, and they were being treated at the hospital.
Yeah.
Xavier DeRusso would never. Okay, they would be as uncomfortable as they possibly could be, and that's all I'm going to say about that. Y'all know how I feel.
We had a lot of Xavier DeRussos in Israel feel like that, but like those are the rules, man. You can't.
I respect it. You know, it really just shows the DNA that you guys have in the IDF, and really in Jewish culture in general. It's like protecting and preserving life and trying so hard to be the bigger and the better person. But maybe I'm just petty.
I don't know.
Well, Noy, thank you again for coming and sitting down with me. Best of luck to you in Tel Aviv. I'll see you. I'm going to be back there in August.
I just got my apartment. Always welcome. And we'll see you there.
I expect a party.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, cousins. Thank you for tuning in for another episode of Respectfully. You guys know the vibes. Be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Let us know what you think. If you have any other questions for Noy, be sure to let me know. I am going to see him again this August in Tel Aviv. And I will see you guys later this week.